Okay, so if we're no longer doing Sunday school and our decades-long commitment to small groups is proving to be an insufficient way of discipling people, then what exactly are we supposed to be doing? Well, that's the question I'm going to answer in this episode of the Pastor's Growing Church Community Podcast. Welcome to the Pastor's Growing Church Community Podcast. I'm Dr. Brandon Party Cooper, and I'm so glad that you're here with me today on this episode. It's a beautiful day out here in Virginia Beach, so if you're thinking about moving anywhere and you want to come somewhere warm and to the beach, you should come here. I'm always trying to get more great people to come out here and be a part, and so if you are looking for a place to go, Virginia Beach may be on that list. But that aside, I want to thank you once again for being here. I want to invite you to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, click or ding, whatever that bell is, and share your love for this podcast and these videos. Thank you so much for being here. And when you do that, it helps other people find this content, helps them to grow their church, helps them to figure out new ways to reach their community. And so go ahead, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ding the bell, and this content will get to more people, more pastors just like you, looking for answers on how to grow their church and develop more people to reach their communities. Now, over the last couple of episodes, we have been talking about discipleship. We talked about what discipleship is. We talked about why we should be doing discipleship and the benefits to you as a pastor, to your church, and to your congregants, and why discipleship is important. And I would imagine for the most part, we are all on the same page. We understand why it's important. We understand what it is to a degree. We're all on the same page. We're in agreement. Today, we may find some shaky ground. We may find a place where maybe we aren't in agreement, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. Or if you're okay with it, I'm okay with it. But I'm asking you to hear me out. Just walk with me through this. Let me just present my thoughts and my perspectives as we walk through today's episode. Because today, what we're going to talk about is how to do discipleship. Now, there's lots of ways to do it. There's lots of perspectives. There's lots of models. We're going to talk about that. We're going to dive into it. And I'm going to present what I think needs to be happening in the direction that I think we are going, whether we like it or not, whether you like it, whether I like it. This is the direction I think the church is going in order to reach people and disciple them at a level that's healthy spiritual growth, developing people to run after Jesus, developing people who are in love with him, developing people who know their Bibles and can disciple other people. That's the goal. Discipleship should lead to more discipleship. And so I think this is where we're going. I think this is the direction the church is going. So hang with me a little bit and give me just a little bit of leeway as I walk through what I'm seeing happening in churches across the country. So first of all, I want to present just some research that I found. So research from the Barna Group done in 2015 shows that only 39% of regular attending Christians, so these are people who come to church on a regular basis, are not involved in any form of discipleship. That means they're not being discipled themselves and they're not discipling others. 39% of our congregations sitting in our church week after week are not involved in any form of discipleship. Now, that was back in 2015. Other research from Barna done in 2022 indicates that only 58% of churched adults, again, people who are coming to church on a regular basis, 58% of churched adults feel strongly that spiritual formation is a part of their church experience. This is positive because it shows that 58% of people, adults attending churches, say that spiritual formation is a part of their church experience. That's great. Now, this includes strong Christians. This includes your leadership. This includes your core attenders. This includes your regular attenders. It includes the people that you would think of as the strong Christians in my church, the core leaders, the core people. That would be included in this 58%. 58% of them are saying, yes, spiritual formation is a part of my church experience. But the flip side of that is that 42% are saying, no, it's not. 42% of your congregation who are on your board, who are leading teams and departments, who are core leaders, core people in your church, 42% are saying, nope, spiritual formation is not a part of my experience. And so that's alarming. That's concerning from a pastoral standpoint that 42% are saying spiritual formation is not a part of my experience. And 39% are saying they're not involved in any form of discipleship, whether that's being discipled or discipling others. Now, if you're a glass is half full person, great. You're looking at the 58%, and you're saying, hey, 58% are saying, yes, spiritual formation is a part of my church. And you're looking at the 61%, and you're saying, hey, that's great, because 61% are saying that they're involved in some sort of discipleship, either they're being discipled or they're discipling others. So those are all positives. And I think those are things to be happy about. They're things to celebrate. But at the same time, there's also a part of me that says, but is that good enough? Like, is that really where we should be? Should we be hanging our hat on the 61% and the 58% and saying, hey, job well done, let's move on? Or should we be saying, hold on, I want more of our people in our congregations involved in discipleship. I want them to be growing in their relationship with Jesus, learning the scriptures, being at a point where they can disciple other people. Now, there is an element of some people don't want to be involved, or some people are not aware, or some people come and they sit in church and that's really all they want to do. And there's not a lot we can do about that. Now, with these stats in mind, it's clear that we are doing discipleship okay. I wouldn't say that we're doing great. I wouldn't say we're knocking it out of the park. 61%, 58% are not great numbers. And so if we are saying, okay, we're doing an okay job of discipleship, then what have we been doing? What has been happening over the last few decades that has led to this? So let's just take a look. So one of the things that we have been doing is, one of the models that we use is Sunday sermons. That's really all we offer. So, maybe this is where you are as a church. Maybe people come on a Sunday morning, they sit in Sunday morning service, they hear you preach, they hear your sermon, and that's really the only discipleship they get. Maybe you have small groups that are relationship oriented, that are activity oriented, that, maybe it's more just social. They're gathering together. Maybe you have some events throughout the week or throughout your year. But really, the Sunday morning sermon is really the primary discipleship piece. Now, another model is small groups. So sure, you have your Sunday morning services and you're preaching every Sunday, but at the same time, you're offering small groups that are more than just social gatherings. They're more than just interest gatherings. They're more than just relational. There is a Bible study, book study element to them. And so maybe that's where you are. You have a Sunday morning service, but you have small groups. Small groups is maybe your people gather together in small groups throughout the week, and they're talking about the Sunday morning sermon. So you're creating questions or conversation prompts or whatever, and you're giving it to your small group leaders, and then they're taking people through those. So that's another model. One is just Sunday morning services, sermons, and then the other is small groups that have some sort of teaching, discussion, discipleship element in place. Another model is the one-on-one mentoring, to where you have set up a system of sorts to where you have people designated as mentors or disciplers. And as people get saved or as they reach a certain point in their involvement at your church, you are funneling them through this process where they're connecting with one other person, and that person is taking them in a one-on-one relationship through some sort of discipleship progress. Maybe there's a curriculum involved. Maybe there is some sort of process they're going through, or maybe it's just, hey, you're a strong Christian, and you have gone through whatever training or course or whatever it is that you offer, and so you're putting that person in place to then disciple another person. So those are three common discipleship models that we've been using for the better part of the last 20, maybe 30-ish years. Once Sunday school kind of went by the wayside in the, I don't know, mid to late 90s, early 2000s, we started moving towards these other models, small groups being the primary one. The Sunday morning sermon only model has been sporadic, but has kind of been gaining some traction over the last decade or so, being used a lot more. And I think partially because in response to small groups just not being a great discipleship piece or a discipleship tool because it's more social. It's more gathering together and building relationships. And so, and then the one-on-one mentorship has probably gained a little more traction in the last decade as well, kind of trying to emulate Jesus's model of walking life with his disciples. And so we've created this one-on-one mentorship model to where people are walking through life with others and kind of teaching and training and developing and discipling along the way. And I think that there is merit to all three of these. I think all three of these are great tools to use. Sunday morning service obviously has been for as long as the church has been around, has been used as a discipleship piece. And so, it's obviously a viable option. However, the problem is that in Sunday morning sermons, and I don't know how you preach. I know for me, I have to keep in mind that we have a whole uh, community of people at varying levels of spiritual development that I'm trying to speak to. So if I'm speaking to the newcomers coming in the room, well, those who are a little more seasoned Christians, they are not getting necessarily the depth or the understanding that they're looking for. At the same time, if I'm preaching to the seasoned Christians in the room who've been serving Jesus forever and have read their Bible multiple times and have sat through thousands of sermons and Sunday school classes and whatever, if I'm preaching to them and speaking at a level that they're wanting and hungry for, well, then the newcomers they can't keep up because there's too much background information. There's too many extra things that I'm including that newcomers are just not going to understand. And so, so that's the challenge with the Sunday morning sermon only model. The small group model, it is great and there's lots of merit, and we've been using it for, goodness, I don't know, 20, 30 years at least in some form. And I think there's a lot of value to it. I personally am a huge advocate of interest groups, trying to get people connected, building relationships. At the same time, the problem is that small groups are relationship oriented. At its very core of what a small group system is, it's relationship oriented. And so when push comes to shove, the relationship piece will override the discipleship piece or the content piece or whatever you're talking about, a discussion. I know most small groups that I've been a part of, it's a lot of getting together and hanging out and having conversations. And sure, at some point we sit down and we walk through some sort of curriculum, or we walk through some sort of discussion. But honestly, most small group leaders are not developed or trained at a level that they're really able to teach scripture and go into the theology and the deeper things of the Bible. And at the same time, there's just not as much time. I mean, if we're meeting, let's say a small group is meeting for an hour and a half, usually it's 45 minutes, maybe an hour of like getting into the discussion and conversation and getting into the content. And so the small group model has been good, but I think has shown that it's not discipling people at a deep level. And then you have the one-on-one mentoring model. And the one-on-one mentoring model it's just not scalable. Now, if you have a church of 75 to 100 people, maybe so. If you have a great system of training and development and connecting people with other people, maybe you could push that up to 200, 250. But there is a point where the scalability is just not there. You don't have enough people to one-on-one disciple others. And so you have people wanting or needing to be discipled, but you don't have enough people ready to disciple them, partially because it takes a while to disciple people to a point where they're ready to disciple others. And the lead time just takes so long. And so you have a backlog of people wanting or needing to be discipled. If you're a growing church, you have this backlog that your one-on-one discipleship model is just not going to keep up with. And so there's a scalability issue with that. So what that does is it kind of leaves us with our hands in the air and be like, what are we doing then? Because if none of those three models are really great models to use, what are we left with? And the problem is, and kind of what's been exacerbating the problem over the last 5 years is 2020. COVID-19 hits, it shuts the world down. Everybody shelters in place. Everybody sits in their homes. They're watching, watching church online. They're tuning in on YouTube or Facebook. And their social behaviors changed in that 2020, 2021 window. there's lots of social behaviors that have changed that we're not going to return to probably. I know some of us are still saying, when we get back to the way it was or the way it used to be back in 2019, but the reality is we're not going back to that. The world has moved on, and we have to, as pastors, figure out what does that mean? Because the reality is their social behaviors have changed, and there's nothing you and I can necessarily do to change that back. It's not whether or not we agree with it. It's not whether or not we like it. It's just a question of it. It's the way it is, and we have to adapt. I know for me, I grew up in an era where we went to Sunday school, and I loved Sunday school, and I still love Sunday school. But the reality is, Sunday school just wasn't a model or a tool that was working anymore. And so we've went away from Sunday school. And there's a part of me that still wants to go back to Sunday school. How can we figure out how to make Sunday school work? But the reality is, it's just not happening. For most people in most places and most churches around the country, Sunday school is not an option. So we're not going back to it. Well, that's kind of where we are here as well, is we've changed. 2019, 2020, 2021 has been a dramatic shift in how people behave and how they approach just their own social lives, let alone how they approach church. We're not going to change that. And it doesn't matter if we agree or not. We've moved beyond, and we have to figure out what's next. Our role as pastors is to provide opportunities for discipleship. That's the goal. And so we have to figure out how to use what's available to us and react and mold to the situation that we're in to disciple people where they are, which is why I think 100% the direction that we are moving is towards a digital discipleship model. Now, let me kind of unpack that a little bit, because I know for some, when I say digital discipleship, there's this immediate recoil or this immediate like, oh, I don't want to do that. Or there's the response of, oh, we're already doing that. And so let me just kind of unpack that a little bit. And what I mean by this digital discipleship, it's not just a podcast. It's not sermon highlights on Instagram. It's not reading books on Kindle together. That's not digital discipleship. Those are digital pieces that you can implement into a discipleship process, but that's not what digital discipleship really is. So I define digital discipleship as this. Digital discipleship is an intentional progression of content that can be consumed online, but is intermingled with personal interactions. I'll read that again. Digital discipleship is an intentional progression of content that can be consumed online, but is intermingled with personal interactions. For instance, let's say you want to do a study on the book of John, or you want to take people through a study of the book of John. What that would look like is a series of videos of teaching, whether it's you or somebody else who is qualified, who is trained, who can teach at a deeper theological, biblical level, teaching those videos to people that they can consume whenever they need to, whenever they want to, whenever it's convenient for them. It's exploring the text of the scriptures. It's explaining truths that are found in the text. But it's also mixed with gatherings of some sort. So the basic model that I encourage is to use videos of teaching videos, but then use a once a month gathering where questions can be asked, where discussion can be had, where people are gathering together, whether it's one-on-one, whether it's in a group, however that looks. But they're gathering together personally, and it doesn't have to be in a physical location. It could be online if it needed to be. Some of you have churches that are, your church congregation is spread all over the country, and you want to gather them together in a digital format, whether it's a Zoom or a Google Meet or whatever that looks like. But you're gathering together for interaction, personal interaction, conversations, discussions. That's what a digital discipleship model would look like. Another thing would be a series of emails. One of the things that we see a lot now is email courses. So, I send an email to you that is walking through teaching content, whether it's written or whether it's a video or whatever, but it's an email that has all the content in it. And then the next day you get another email, or the next week you get another email, whatever the sequence is, but it's emails with content in them that then is followed up with a conversation or a discussion or a group of meeting, whatever that is. That's what this digital discipleship looks like. It's some sort of progressional, intentional process, learning biblical truths, learning theology, learning how to be a better Christian, learning how to be closer to Jesus, whatever that is, with digital pieces coupled with personal interactions. And the reason I think that this is so important, or the reason why I think this is where we are going, is because people are consuming content whenever they can. The greatest commodity that we all have is time. Your greatest commodity is time. Mine is time. Every member of your congregation, their greatest commodity is time. And we live in a day and age where we are overly busy. We have filled our schedules with way more things than what we need. Some of that is just because of the nature of the beast. I have 3 kids, and we're going through baseball season, and we have games or practices almost every night of the week. Now, sure, I could pull my kids out of sports and say, you know what, we're not going to do that because we have this at the church and this at the church. But the reality is then they're going to miss out on the opportunity to play baseball and have sports. There was a time when I remember when Wednesdays was a guarded time. There were no sports activities on Wednesdays because there were church events and church activities and church services. Well, we're past that now. That's no longer a thing. Schools are having sporting events every day of the week, it feels like. Sundays have sporting events and Wednesdays have sporting events, and every day of the week has sporting events. Like, there are constant sporting events. There are all kinds of responsibilities. Our jobs, though sometimes some jobs are going more remote, there's also this constant need to be engaged and plugged in and a part. People's lives are too busy, and time is a huge commodity for them. And so what we have to do is we have to figure out, how do we disciple people in the time that they have? And a lot of times it's at 11:30 when when the day is over and they're mentally shutting down and they're able to focus in and actually watch a video on the book of John. Or it's early in the morning at 4:30 before everybody gets up. That's my time. I get up at 4:30 and I spend my time by myself, just thinking, whether it's working out or whether it's going through my Bible study, whatever I'm doing. But 4:30, because nobody's going to be up for 2 hours. And so I get up because that's my time to where I can focus and really do some things without being interrupted. Or it's over lunchtime when somebody has a lunch break and they're able to pull away and eat their lunch and watch a video on the book of John, whatever that is. But we have to figure out ways to be in the little gaps of time that people have and engage them where they are, because not everybody can have 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock on a Wednesday night to come together and sit down and go through a Bible study. That's just not how people operate anymore. And again, we can disagree about whether that's right or not, but that's just where we are. And our goal is to say, okay, I have to disciple people. So how am I going to do that? Well, we find ways to fit into the little gaps of time that they have and create content that they can take and learn from and grow in whenever it's convenient for them. So let me just give you the overall benefits of an engaging digital discipleship approach. So the first benefit of a digital discipleship experience is reach and engagement. Again, we can reach people anywhere, anytime. We create content, whether it's videos, whether it's podcasts, whether it's articles, whether it's stories, whether it's devotionals, whether there's learning tools that we create or we purchase and send out, whatever it is, we put it on our website. You can put it on a page of your website where people can access it to, or you can put it on a learning management system to where people can log in and they can go through a course or go through the content that you've created. The nice thing is that you can reach them at any point, and you can reach people outside of your congregation. Let's say you have a people in your community who, maybe they don't have time to come to church on Sunday morning, or maybe they work on Sunday, but they really would like to be a part of what you're doing. Well, by creating digital content, you can be a part of them and part of their discipleship experience, part of their lives, and they can be a part of your church, even though they're not coming on a Sunday morning, because you've made the content available to them whenever they're available. I know in my own experience, what I've seen in the last couple of churches I've been a part of is people are engaging with our online content for months before they ever walk through our doors. And honestly, they are coming hungry because they've seen the content, they've seen the online videos, they've seen our Sunday morning services, whatever it is, and they're all in by the time they walk through the doors because they've already been a part of our community and they've already engaged with content that we've created. And so that's the first thing, reach and engagement. The second thing is flexibility and accessibility. Again, anytime, anywhere, whenever it's convenient. It allows people to access it on their phones, allows them to access it on their computers. In some instances, they can access it on their TVs. There's easy access. And that's also for those who maybe they can't leave their homes. Maybe you have people who are in their homes and they're either unable physically to leave, or maybe emotionally and mentally they're just not able to go out into the world anymore. Again, because of COVID and because of 2020 and because of everything we've gone through over the last 4 years, there are some people who are still in their homes and have not left. Well, you could reach into those people's lives. You could reach into your community and touch them by having digital content that they can engage with and be a part of and grow and learn from. And so flexibility and accessibility. The third thing is community building. I know that when I say digital discipleship, a lot of people immediately think of an individual isolated, going through content by themselves and not really engaging with a community of people, the community of our churches. But that doesn't have to be true. That's absolutely not true if we build the system right. We create an experience where they are engaging with somebody else, whether it's you, whether it's another pastor on staff, whether it's one of your leaders. They're engaging and asking questions, and we're responding back to them. We're sending them emails or we're shooting them a text and checking in on them. We're finding ways to build community with them and allows them to be a part of community. And growth with Jesus, a relationship with Jesus, was always meant to be done in community, always from the very beginning. We see it all throughout scripture as community, community, community. Now, for some of us, we think of physical in the same place right now togetherness as community, and I would argue that's the best form of community, is to be together in a space where we can connect with each other, we can shake hands, we can put our arms around each other, we can put our hands on each other and pray for us. Those are the best options. But for some people, those aren't possibilities, and so we have to find ways to reach in and build community where they are and where they're comfortable, and digital discipleship allows for that. And then the final benefit is content creation and distribution. And this is actually one of my favorites because, as you know, if you've been around this podcast or around me much at all, one of my biggest things is I want to grow churches without burning out pastors. The statistics are off the chart on the number of pastors who are burning out, leaving the ministry, particularly since 2020 and COVID-19. And the benefit of a digital discipleship model is that it allows us to create content one time. I created a discipleship course. It's a 7-session discipleship course. And for a long time, I would teach that every Sunday during second service. So my students would go to first service, then they would come to second service, and I would teach the course. And so every week I was teaching those 7 sessions. And when the 7th session was over, the following week, I'd go right back into session 1 and go through another 7-week process and then another 7 weeks. And so every Sunday I would spend an hour and a half-ish to 2 hours teaching the same content over the course of an entire year. Now, what if I took the time and spent to create that course in a digital discipleship model, created the videos. So 7 courses, let's say 2 hours, that's 14 hours. What if I took the time to create those, and let's just say at 20 hours, so it took me 20 hours to make those. And then that was it. And I wouldn't have to use that over and over again. How many hours would I have saved over the course of a year doing a video? And then I brought those people in once a month and we sat down for a 2-hour conversation, discussion, answering questions, going deeper. How many hours would I have saved if I had done that? Well, for you as a pastor, you have a million things on your plate. Things that are taking up your time, that are pulling you away from your family, that are not allowing you to spend enough time on your sermons, that are keeping you from growing the church in other directions that you want to, or maybe even feel God is calling you to, but you're just not able to because you don't have the time for it. Well, what if you were to create content, save it, put it in a video, and then use it over and over and over again, how much time would you be saving? And how much more could you create? How many more courses, how many more lessons, how many more conversations could you create if you were doing that? If you were capturing it, even writing. And I'm not saying everything has to be video. It could just be writing. What if you sat down and wrote out a lesson and then distributed that lesson over and over and over again instead of teaching it over and over and over again? How much time would you save? The benefit of a digital discipleship model is that you can create the content and distribute it easily without taking up more of your time. And for me, and what I do to help pastors like you, that's the number one thing for me. I want people to be discipled, absolutely, but I don't want pastors to be burned out in the process. Because if we lose pastors, if we lose you at your local church, and we lose you completely, you walk out of ministry, then we are building this great deficit of pastors. I want to find ways to make sure that you are able to do what you need to do to save time, to be with your family, to take care of yourself, and to lead the church the way you are called to lead it without having to be overwhelmed with the mountain of tasks that are asked of you every week. And so a digital discipleship model allows for that. Now, I get it. Not everybody's going to agree with me. You may not agree with me at this point. You may be saying, you know what, Brandon, this whole digital discipleship thing is just, it's not for me. It's not going to work. It's not biblical. I get that. As a futurist, I get that all the time because part of what I do, part of my job is to look across the next 5 to 10 years and say, this is where we're going. And this is something that I've watched over the last almost 6 or 7 years now. 2020 only sped it up. But what I've watched is this move towards digital discipleship. And now we're at a point where if we're not advocating and implementing a digital discipleship process in our churches, then we are falling very quickly behind and we are not discipling people at the level that we should. And I think that that is a huge issue that we have to dive into. And so I get it. You may not be in agreement with me. You may not even like what I'm having to say. That's fine. I understand that. I'm just here to help you. I want to see you grow your church. I want to see you flourish as a pastor, and I want to see your community reached. And I believe that digital discipleship is the direction that we are going, whether we like it or not, whether we agree with it or not. It's the direction we're going. And so what can we do? What can you do to add a digital discipleship strategy into your church model and serve your people and your community at a higher level, taking them deeper into the scriptures? What can you do to make that happen? So I'm going to encourage you, spend some time praying about it, even have some conversations with some of your leaders, have some conversations with other pastors in your area or other pastors you know around the country, and just talk it through. Don't shut the door on it. Just talk it through. If you want to talk to me about it, I would love to talk to you about it. I'm not here to convince you. I'm just here to present you with where we are and what the possibilities are in your area and in your congregation. Now, if you decide that you are ready to dive into a digital discipleship model, or you're ready to start playing around with the possibilities of what that would look like, then I want to invite you to get my digital discipleship starter kit. Now, this is simple. You don't have to get a whole bunch of equipment. You don't have to do a whole bunch of things. It's just a very simple approach to how to get started with the audio portion of doing discipleship, whether it's podcasts or whether you're just sending out audio files to your congregation, or you're creating a discipleship course on your website, whatever it is, you can get this starter kit that'll get you started. Just go to brandonpartycooper.com/starter kit. Go there, get your starter kit. It'll show you the handful of things that you need to get started. And you'll be able to start just playing around with what a digital discipleship model would look like for you and your congregation. So again, go to brandonpartycooper.com/starter kit and it'll get you started right away. Alrighty. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for being here. Even if you're upset with me today, I appreciate you hanging in there and getting to this point in the podcast. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next episode.